ඇමරිකාව ප්‍රමුඛ රටවල් 5ක් විසින් ශ්‍රී ලංකාව සම්බන්ධයෙන් සකස් කළ යෝජනාව ඉදිරිපත් කිරීමට නියමිතව තිබෙනවා එක්සත් ජාතීන්ගේ මානව හිමිකම් කොමිසම හමුවට. අපි සූදානම් මානව හිමිකම් කොමිසමේ දැන් සිදුවන තත්ත්වය ඔබට වාර්තා කරන්න. එහි සජීව දර්ශන වෙත අපි දැන් යොමු වෙනවා. මේ ඔබ දකින්නේ ජිනීවාහි මානව හිමිකම් කොමිසමේ සජීව දර්ශන. මේ ශ්‍රී ලංකාව මේ සම්බන්ධයෙන් තමයි රටවල් අදහස් දැක්වීමට
extrajudicial killings, torture, violations of the rights to freedom of expression, association, and peaceful assembly, threats to judicial independence and the rule of law, as well as intimidation of and reprisals against human rights defenders, members of civil society, lawyers, and journalists. It also expresses alarm over increasing attacks against members of religious minority groups, including Muslims, Christians, and Hindus. At the same time, the international community has become increasingly concerned by the continued lack of progress in achieving reconciliation, justice, and accountability for serious allegations of violations of international human rights law and international humanitarian law. In her latest report, the High Commissioner called for an international inquiry mechanism to address these issues in the absence of a credible national process with tangible results. In response to that call, and in order to promote justice, reconciliation, and accountability in Sri Lanka, this resolution requests that the Office of the High Commissioner undertake, with assistance from relevant experts in special procedures, a comprehensive investigation into alleged serious violations and abuses of human rights and related crimes by both parties in Sri Lanka during the period covered by the report of the government's own Lessons Learned and Reconciliation Commission. It also requests OHCHR to continue to monitor, assess, and report on the current human rights situation in Sri Lanka, including any relevant national processes. This Council has urged the Government of Sri Lanka to accept technical assistance from the OHCHR and relevant special procedures in order to address these concerns. But unfortunately, the Government has not chosen to accept that assistance. The resolution continues to encourage that cooperation, and it also reiterates this Council's call on the Government of Sri Lanka to implement the constructive recommendations in Sri Lanka's own LLRC report and to hold accountable those responsible for violations. The sponsors of this resolution are confident that continued attention by the Council will help to promote reconciliation, justice, and accountability for the people of Sri Lanka. We therefore urge the Council to adopt this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the representative of the United States. Does the former Yugoslav Republic of Yugoslavia wish to take the floor? Of Macedonia wish to take the floor?
Macedonia, as a member of the core group, is pleased to join in presentation for adoption of the draft resolution promoting reconciliation, accountability, and human rights in Sri Lanka. The resolution is designed to follow up the resolutions 22/1 from the last year and 19/2 from 2012, which encouraged the government of Sri Lanka to take comprehensive steps to achieve genuine reconciliation and accountability after its civil war. As suggested in the substantive report of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, more than 4 years after the end of the conflict, the government of Sri Lanka has yet to make significant progress in fostering reconciliation and ensuring justice and accountability. There is a concern about the incident of violence against religious minorities, intimidation of journalists and human rights defenders. The resolution takes note of the progress that has been made in certain areas in Sri Lanka, but recognizes that much remains to be done. Through this resolution, we urge the government of Sri Lanka to live up its commitments towards reconciliation and accountability, specifically implementing the recommendation of its Lessons Learned and Reconciliation Commission. The Republic of Macedonia is grateful for the constructive engagement on this text, which reflects a wide-range cross-regional input by delegations. We are committed to working constructively with Sri Lanka and the international community to address the problems highlighted in the Office of the High Commissioner report and this resolution. Together with the members of the core group, our co-sponsors, the Republic of Macedonia, ask that the Council adopt this resolution. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. I now give the floor to Mauritius.
Mr. President, Mauritius adds its voice in introducing this draft resolution. Mauritius is guided by the fundamental principles of human rights, and we carefully consider country-specific resolution with a sense of engagement rather than confrontation. As regards the human rights situation in Sri Lanka, Mauritius has pursued a principled and consistent position since 2009, when we first joined the initiators of the draft resolution on Sri Lanka. In 2012, Mauritius voted in favor of the resolution on promoting reconciliation and accountability in Sri Lanka. As a multicultural and multi-ethnic island state, Mauritius attaches great importance to the human rights for all, regardless of religious belief, faith or ethnicity. We support the rights of all Sri Lankans to live together in peace in a unified land. My delegation recognizes the progress made in some humanitarian affairs. We also acknowledge the findings and recommendations of the LLRC and its possible contribution to the process of national reconciliation, which is key to any post-conflict situation. However, my delegation concurs with the High Commissioner's assessment of human rights situation in Sri Lanka, that accountability and justice should be improved. All the recommendations of the LRC should be implemented, and domestic processes should be enhanced for the promotion of meaningful reconciliation. Mr. President, allow me to emphasize that our focus is for greater efforts towards reconciliation and inclusiveness in Sri Lanka. The draft resolution which Mauritius co-sponsored calls on Sri Lanka to live up to its commitments towards reconciliation and accountability. We believe that an international investigation on alleged abuses, violations and crimes committed by both sides in Sri Lanka would create a genuine, credible and impartial framework for the engagement of all stakeholders, and it would eventually lead to a national reconciliation in Sri Lanka. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. The Secretariat informs me that there are 4 additional co-sponsors. I now give the floor to the members of the Council who would like to take it to make general comments. I see none. Oh. Let me take the list. Italy, Montenegro. Anyone else? United Kingdom. Well, I'll close the list now. I'll give the floor to the representative of Italy.
President, I have the honor to speak on behalf of the European Union. The EU is strongly committed to promoting reconciliation, accountability and human rights in Sri Lanka. Despite some positive elements, including on reconstruction and resettlement of internally displaced persons, limited progress has been made in fully implementing the LLRC recommendation and in addressing the broader issues of reconciliation and accountability, as highlighted also in the report of the High Commissioner. The High Commissioner's report also outlines a range of human rights issues in Sri Lanka, including a lack of progress in accountability for serious human rights violations, compulsory land acquisition, shrinking space for civil society and media, rising religious intolerance and undermining of independent institutions, including the judiciary. The EU shares these concerns and urges the Sri Lankan government to uphold its international human rights obligation and make progress on the full implementation of the recommendation of the LLRC. The EU shares in particular the concern of the High Commissioner that domestic investigation to date into allegations of serious violations and abuses of international human rights and humanitarian law, including possibly war crimes, have lacked credibility and have been insufficient. We note the assessment of the High Commissioner that this was fundamentally a question of political will rather than a function of time or technical capacity. The resolution before us addresses inter alia this absence of credible domestic efforts by the Sri Lankan government by requesting the OHCHR to conduct a comprehensive independent investigation into these matters of major concern to the Council, and in support of the recommendation of the High Commissioner. The European Union lends its full support to the resolution and calls on all members of the UN Human Rights Council to equally support its adoption. Thank you, Mr. President.
Je remercie l'ambassadeur de l'Italie.
I thank the ambassador of Italy. I give the floor to Montenegro.